Okay, so what you should see, of course, on your screen here is video meeting 3. You can see it looks like we have a number of things. I'm just primarily concentrating on the fact that we can get through the maps and sectional charts and whatever else we get through. That's a bonus plan as far as I'm concerned this evening. So let's go right with it. So hopefully you got your testing supplement, of course, because we're going to dive into that right away here in just a minute. I've already gone ahead and pulled the latest and greatest weather for us. Sky Vector, I'll do a little bit of a drive-by of that this evening, explain a little bit more than just what I've done in the past. We will get into nodems.aim.faa.gov. It was one of those websites you were given on the first night. So we're just going to see what a NOTAM is, Notice to Air Missions. And hopefully we're going to get in the Kahoot for sectional charts and the maps, airspace. Of course, have a notebook available, take any notes. Please, 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 obviously let me know if you have any issues in regards to the LMS. Okay, got one more out here, good. All right, next. So here's where we stand as far as the calendar goes. We got a little bit through the airspace lesson. Hopefully we'll finish that up this evening, and then sectional charts. And once again, if we can get to these others, that will be fine. Main thing is I need to get these two most challenging lessons that we have. So airspace, sectional charts, and then we'll try and get through the other portions here. And then hopefully I can get to a takeaway. So just as a reminder, these were the websites and apps that we kind of asked you guys to go ahead and get. Please make sure that you've got those. The two, DroneUp and Aloft, you've got a username and password. Those were free, if you recall. And this evening, we're going to actually get into one of, or a couple of these websites that you've may or may not have the opportunity to get into. Okay, here's so the weather. I pulled that out of Savannah since that's local to me. That's down here. If you recall, you just go to aviationweather.gov, aviationweather.gov, and you can be able to request some METAR data, put in the airport ID, of course, KSAV, decoded. Since you guys are new to the game, it'll decode it for you. And then, of course, you get the METAR data that's right here. So here's the report, the way it stands. I'll go to the next screen and we'll go, once again, we're going to explain what that is. I asked you for a reminder, please kind of do it by category. It really will help you trying to understand these reports. So the location, of course, is Savannah Hilton Head International. It was taken on the 19th at 20:53 Zulu. The winds are coming from 60 degrees at 10 knots. Visibility is 10 statute miles. We've got scattered clouds at 3,300. Just remember to add 2 zeros. Broken clouds at 4,500 and then broken at 8,000. Our temperature is 29 degrees Celsius with a dew point of 21. If you recall, dew point is the temperature at which the water will condense and fall out of the sky, and the temperature of it determines what the form of it will be. So if it was to come out this way, it's probably going to be dew or rain. And the barometric pressure is 29.95 inches of mercury. Any questions on the weather report? Okay, game on. All right, so we're going to go quickly into the airspace. I think where we left off is we got into 2 special use airspaces, if I recall. So we're just going to go right through this, and hopefully it'll be a good review for you. So if you remember, the big takeaway from this was the categories and types of airspace are dictated by the complexity of what goes on within these, whether it be a class B, a C, a D, or of course E. It's all based on the complexity and density of the air movements. So airspace, if you recall, there's 2 types, there's regulatory and non-regulatory, and you can see right underneath here which falls into each respective category. Primarily, most of the special use airspaces will fall into non-regulatory. So we had controlled, uncontrolled, special use, and we had other. I will talk about MTR. So as far as controlled, Class A, that's up there starting at 18,000 feet and goes up to 60,000 feet. Class B, there's 37 of them. They're the big boys, they're the Bostons, the Denvers, the Chicagos. You've got Class C, which a good example would be Savannah down here in Georgia. Class D is a Hilton Head. And remember, Class D, Those are like a cylinder. That's the easiest way to kind of look at them. They're like a cylinder, which means the floor will always be surface. And there was 4 types of Class E. We'll quickly review those again. And if you recall, Federal Airways, those are those thin blue lines that you would see going through the maps. And those are Class E airspace as well. G fills in all the gaps. And then we're just starting to get into special use when we left off last Wednesday. Military operating areas, control firing areas, prohibited, restricted, alert, warning, TFRs, and NSAs. And once again, here's the reference for where you might find those. It's reviewed on a yearly basis to make sure the parameters are still good with those. Okay. And then lastly here, you can see we've got the other airspace, which I mentioned. I'm going to talk about MTR's military training routes. All right, big thing here, of course, is the legend. That's the main focus. I want you guys to try and pay attention to. There is a ton of information as here. So if you would just go ahead and break out your legend. All right. I took some time last time, if you recall, to kind of give you the construct of your legend so you could get just a little bit familiar with all the areas that are on here. And the main area, of course, tonight we're going to focus on is this, the airport. Remember the solid blue line, that's Class B. We've got solid magenta, Class C, dash blue is Class D. And D is the only one that will have a little box which tells you what its maximum altitude is for that Class D airspace. And then we talked about Class E. Class E, we had dashed magenta, which means it starts at the surface as far as a controlled area. Inside the shaded area, the floor is 700 feet. And outside the shaded areas, if you recall, that was 1,200 feet. And then we bounced over here and we were just starting to get through the special use airspace. I call them the little picket fences here. We get the blue picket fence, and then we have the magenta picket fence. All right. So just a review, this is once again where we're going to pay a lot of our attention to this evening here, and we'll try and get through that this evening and kind of zoom in here. Remember, there's your solid blues, solid magenta, et cetera, et cetera. The one thing I'll point out again about the Class D, if you remember, this is the ceiling. And if it had a minus sign in front of it, it would mean up to, but not including, like this example here, 4,000 feet. This is a great representation. I wish the air really looked like this, but it doesn't. But here's the 37. We often refer to it as the upside down wedding cake. Class C is the upside down wedding topper. D predominantly will always be a cylinder. And the one thing I want you to remember, B, C, and D, they are all MSL, okay? Mean sea level. Class E airspace is the only one that's AGL, above ground level, okay? Don't forget those. And here's where E starts at the surface. This is the E starting at 700. So I like to say the more correct term, or very descriptive, is E over G with a floor of 700 feet. If it's inside the shaded, if it's outside the shaded, I think it's more accurate to be able to say that's E over G with a floor of 1,200 feet. Once again, this is just a quick kind of Tony summary of all of these, and we're just going to jump right into it again. So here we go. Let's take a look once again. I'm going to blow this up, and I think you guys remember this. Of course, what is this airspace directly over Boston Logan International Airport?
Class B?
Yep, absolutely Class B. And we can tell that by the solid blue lines that are surrounding and directly over Boston Logan International Airport. What is the floor and ceiling right there?
7,000 feet.
Yeah, the floor is the surface, and then the ceiling, of course, would be 7,000 feet.
Inside.
That's correct. Right, directly over the airport. Here is the
Okay.
airport. And remember, the airport is blue. So Dave told us when he read us that legend last week that anything that's in blue for an airport, that's going to have a control tower. And it makes sense. Boston, big airport, it's definitely going to have a control tower. Okay, so we just kind of show you the layers. If you remember a hint I said, when you look at the map, remember the map is 2-dimensional, but you must think 3-dimensional. That sometimes is a difficult part for us. So the inner portion here is surface of 7,000. You can see there's another portion just outside. That's
Like
2,000.
2,000, 7,000.
Yep, 2,000 to 7,000. We got a section out here that was 3,000 to 7,000. And then you can see roughly about midnight, all the way
4,000.
around about 7 is 4,000 to 7,000. Absolutely. So yes, Class B airspace was that one. So move to the next one here. I've got Kansas City here. Once again, it's a solid blue line directly over Kansas City International. What is the floor and ceiling directly over Kansas City? Anybody see it?
8,000, 2,400,
Surface to 8,000.
8,000, sorry.
Yeah, surface to 8,000. And then you're right. Let's look at the second tier would be 24 to 8,000, 3,000, 4,000, 8,000. So just the way the complexity of this airspace is. All right, there's Savannah. What is this airspace directly over Savannah Hilton Head International Airport?
It's a Class C.
Yes, Class C, solid magenta, very good. And then what is the floor and ceiling directly over the airport?
The ceiling's 41,000 feet.
No, the
4,100.
yeah, the surface is the floor, and then
Okay.
4,100, right, would be the ceiling. Absolutely.
I
if-
said the ceiling.
And if we look out here in the second tier or outer ring, that's going to be 1,300 to 4,100. And once again, what is the unit of measurement for Class B, C, or D airspace?
MSL.
MSL. Good job, all over it.
MSL.
All right, so once again, here we got a snapshot here of two airports. This is Ellis Airport in Jacksonville, North Carolina, along with New River McCutcheon Field in Jacksonville, North Carolina. What are these airspaces here?
Class E over G with surface to 700.
No, these are Class D airspace. Remember, go to the
Oh, the
airport.
dotted line.
Yeah,
yeah,
go
yeah.
to the airport and slowly open your aperture and
Dotted
notice.
blue line, D.
That's correct. The dash blue lines is D airspace. That's right. And that's going to be cylinder, means the floor was going to be surface. And then on Ellis, what would be the ceiling of this airspace?
2,600.
That's correct. 2,600. And then over here for McCutcheon would be
2,500.
2,500. Outstanding. All right, now let's take a look here. We've got Waterbury, Connecticut. We got Danbury. We got Sikorsky. We got New Haven. And once again, what is this airspace at these respective airports?
Class D.
Once again, those are D, and the floor and ceiling, let's say for Waterbury, what would that one be?
3,200.
Right, so surface to 3,200, so
Mhm.
floor and ceiling, that's right. And then Danbury, you can see the floor would be surface and
3,000.
3,000. And we look for the little box, 2,500 and 2,500 respectively here for both Tweed and Sikorsky. Okay, good job, guys picking up on it. And now let's get into this one right here. This is Pitt Greenville up in North Carolina, home of, once again, the ECU Pirates. Anybody have an idea what airspace this is?
This is a Class C.
E.
Class E what?
Ooh, that's okay. Class.
E.
Class E surface.
Yeah,
Class-
700 feet above surface.
No, E surface. Remember, go
E
to the
surface.
airport, slowly open your aperture, and what's the first thing you're gonna run into?
Dotted magenta.
Yeah, dash magenta lines that are out here, and these dash magenta lines, if we go to our legend, Class E surface. Yeah, Class E surface. Then you are correct. If we come right outside these dash magenta lines, then yes, I'm still within the shaded. The correct way, or more descriptive way, I should say, is Class E over G with a floor of 700 feet AGL. So there we go. That one was surface. Good. All right, let's take a look at Martin County, Plymouth, and Washington Warren. What do we look at those?
E
Plus E.
airspace with floor. 7,000 or what?
Class E over G, floor to 700.
Outstanding. AGL. Yes. E over G with a floor of 700 feet. That's correct. Yep. Much more descriptive. And then, of course, what is all this now outside of here? What is that airspace?
G.
Class E over G, floor to 1200 AGL.
That's correct. So it is G to an extent up to from surface up to, but not including 1200 feet. But at 1200 feet, it turns into class E airspace. And if you'll notice here, do you see all of these, what we call Victor routes here, Victor 70, Victor 472, those are your federal airways. And because they're out in predominantly class E airspace, that's what their airspace is. And let me do a follow-up question. What is the possible lowest that the floor of these Victor Federal Airways could ever be?
Is it 12,000?
I wouldn't go 12,000, about 1,200. 1,200, right?
Yes.
Because all this airspace out here is E over G at 1,200, right?
1,200.
Yeah, you got to drop a zero for me and then you'd be all over. Absolutely. Good job. Class E over G. All right, so let's play a little in our book here for a change. So if you would please go to figure 70 for those of you who have your books. And then Dave, I'm assuming, I was hoping you got your book. Any luck?
I'm in a different location. I'm gonna try to drive to where my book is at. So I'll be on.
All right, sounds good. All right, so I'm looking at figure 70, and this is San Francisco International Airport. And if you don't have your book right with you, you should be able to see in the slide here, hopefully. But what is the airspace directly over San Francisco International Airport?
1,000 to surface to 1,000.
First,
Class
what is the class of airspace? Class B, right? And
That's
now,
B.
yeah, give me the parameters. What would be the floor and ceiling directly over San Francisco International Airport?
Would be surface to 1,000.
Close. Got to always add 2 zeros.
To
10,000.
10,000.
Yeah, there we go. Surface is 10,000. And if you take a look at the one that you have in your book there, because it might be a little bit difficult to see here, you can see that there is all sorts of layers with this particular one. You got 1,500, 10,000, 2,100 to 10,000. I got 3,000, 10,000, 1,600 to 10,000. I got 5,000, 10,000, 6,000, 10,000, 4,000 to 10,000. So very, very complicated area that's around here. But once again, what I would ask you to do is if you're given a point, just go to that point and then ever so slowly open your aperture and see what airspace is directly above you at that point. That's the easiest way to be able to do that. Okay. So absolutely, this was class B airspace. Good job. All right, well, playing along, let's go down to figure 69, if you will. Just flip the page or pay attention up here if you can. And I'm looking for the airspace right here, kind of in your neck of the woods there, Dave. Corpus Christi International Airport right here. What is that class of airspace?
Class C.
Class C, absolutely. And then what is the floor and ceiling directly over that airspace?
Surface to 4,000.
Outstanding. Surface of 4,000. And then you can see it's got a broken tier out here on the outside here, right? We got 1,200 to 4,000 all the way around to about the 7 o'clock. And then we got 1,500 to 4,000 over here on that left side. So good. You guys are starting to see that stuff. Next, class C. Good. All right, let's go to figure 20 if you can. And for those of you with your book, you'll find this airport down in the very lower portion of figure 20. Once you get it, just give me a thumbs up. Gives me a thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Yeah, you'll see it all the way down there in the lower portion about center. That's Elizabeth City Regional Airport, and the airport I'm looking for is right here in the center, Elizabeth City. What is the class of airspace directly over Elizabeth City Regional Airport?
Is it a
I'm
class
like-
E?
D,
Class,
That's
excuse me?
D.
Yeah,
D.
Delta.
Class,
Yeah.
okay.
Delta.
Class Delta, because if you see, here's our airport and we open the aperture and what do I run into? I got dashed blue lines all the way around it. And that
Okay.
means if it's class D, it's gonna have a floor of surface and a ceiling, in this case of what?
2,500.
2,500.
2,500, absolutely. Remember, still MSL, B, C, and D are MSL. Next. Class
Funny,
D.
Tony, because I'm like 20 minutes away from that airport right now.
Oh, wow, you really? Oh, awesome. I used to be up there quite a bit. I was stationed up in those areas, so I'm very familiar with those areas. And, you know, just on a personal note, you can keep all that Virginia stuff up there. You can keep that. You can keep the
That's
Virginia
crazy.
Beach. You can keep all of that stuff. Oh my God, that stuff was crazy up there. The tunnels, it just miserable.
Oh, yes.
But
Oh, yes.
anyways, let's
Going
get on
north.
to better things. There you go. Absolutely. So I'm gonna go to figure 26 if you don't mind. And for those of you that don't have your book with you, we're gonna focus. So if you're on 26, thank you. Just give me a thumbs up that you're there. Good. And we're gonna look at the one here on the left-hand side. Thanks, Jay. And this one is Jamestown Regional. What is the airspace directly over Jamestown Regional?
E,
Class C.
Okay.
Surface.
It's E surface. Perfect. That's what I want to hear. With E, remember there's 4 types, so you got to be very descriptive of what that E is. Good job. E surface. And in fact, you can see this one kind of looks like a keyhole, doesn't it? Completely around this airport. Pretty cool. And once again, let's say I was flying in here and then I decide to go out here where this little power line is, right where my cursor is. And what would that airspace be right in this area?
Class E over G. 700, floor to 700 AGL.
You got it. You got it. Absolutely. Class E over G with a floor of 700. And just to watch this, if I was to continue out of the shaded and came up in this area right here, then it would be what? E over G with a floor of 1200. Okay. So if we look over here at Barnes County Airport over here, what is the airspace directly over Barnes County Airport?
Class E surface?
No,
Oh,
not
no, no.
It's E over G.
E without, what is it called? Like
E over G. Keep going.
E over G, and then it's
700 feet.
7,000.
Surface to 700 AGL.
700.
It's 700 is the control. So it's E over G with a floor of 700 feet. Okay. And then if I wanted to talk of all of this stuff out here, if it's not covered by some other airspace, remember that's going to be E over G with a floor of 1200. Just simple. Anything inside shaded, floor of 700. Anything outside shaded, unless it falls under another airspace, it's going to be E over G with a floor of 1200. That's it. Inside 700, outside 1200. And if it's dashed magenta, then that's surface. Bam. So surface, we just talked about this one over here, E over G at 700. And of course, I just asked about this one. What is the airspace out here? And that is our E over G with a floor of 1200. So real good example of 3 different types of class E airspace. Okay, and we said there was a 4th one, which we don't really have to pay attention to, but we've got to know what it is. If they showed it to us on a map and asked us what we were there, we need to be aware of what that airspace is. And you recall, I called those surface extensions. Remember, the airport is protected, if you will, by the airspace. And those dashed magenta coming off of that airspace, those are called surface extensions, and therefore IFR aircraft, instrument flight rule aircraft. which is not what we operate on. But if I was out here operating, I better have my head on a swivel because there may be other aircraft in the vicinity. Okay, questions on those? Cool. All I did here, if you recall, I just kind of broke it down for you a little bit easier, just so you could see the extension that was out here. And I made a point to kind of highlight or emphasize that you're going to have to get authorization in here because this is controlled airspace from surface up to 2,000 feet, correct? And if that's so, that doesn't necessarily mean I can fly anywhere in here up to 400 feet. It depends on where I'm going to be operating. It's going to be my maximum altitude. So if I was in this area down here, for instance, where my cursor is, I'm going to be limited to a maximum altitude of 200 feet. Of course, the closer I get to the airport, then my maximum altitude is going to be lessened. All right, just a quick review of the Class E airspaces I mentioned. We've got shaded magenta. Anything inside the shaded, please remember that's a floor of 700 feet. Anything on the outside of that, that's a floor of 1,200 feet. And if the airport is surrounded by dashed magenta, then that's surface. If there is an airspace directly around the airport, and then I see dashed magenta lines connected to that, in other words, it's completely covered, that is your surface extension. I do not have to get authorization for that. Next. There's your review once again of our B, C, D. Remember, those are MSL unit of measurement. E is always AGL. All right, let's get into special use. This is basically where we left off the other day. There is military operating, prohibited, restricted, alert, warning, control firing, temporary flight areas, and national security areas. And remember, very important, I had mentioned this to you. You can find out who controls these airspaces by, remember, the legend on the sectional chart. If you recall, last week I showed you what a sectional chart looks like on the map. And I think the easiest way for me, if I recall, was I'm just going to bring it up for you right here. I'm going to stop sharing so you guys can see my total screen here. I'm going to bring everything right here. And now you can see my total screen. All right. So with that total screen here's sky vector, which I am assuming everybody can see right now. And with that said, let's just say, I'm going to emphasize here, I'm going to zoom in. And I would like to know who controls Buford 1 MOA, military operating area. First off, how do I know it's a military operating area? Because I looked at my legend, and my legend says if it's a magenta picket fence, then it could either be an alert area or a military operating area. It tells me right here, it's Buford MOA, and it is a magenta picket fence. Okay. Now we want to find out who actually controls Buford 1 MOA. Like the slide here says, you can find out who controls the airspace by the legend on the sectional chart. Not the legend that has symbology, the legend of who is controlling that. So this view that you're looking at here is on the Charlotte sectional chart. So I'm going to click on that. And you can notice, look down here, here is the legend for what? The special use airspace on the Charlotte sectional chart. So let me show you one other thing about this sectional chart. So I won't cover it later on when we actually talk about sectional charts, since you'll already be exposed to it. I'm going to show you, this is the front page of the Charlotte sectional. And it's telling you the date effective of this, 8 September to 3 November. So it's telling me I'm looking at pretty close to the latest and greatest map. And now I'm going to go and locate my sectional chart legend. And there it is. And what we said was we were looking for Buford 1 MOA. See it right here? That's what we were looking for. So if we want to find that, it is magenta, is it not? It's a magenta picket fence. Well, then I should be looking at magenta letters. And there's Buford 1 MOA. I'm going to blow this up, guys, so probably you guys can see it a little bit better. That's the name of it, Buford 1. Where is it controlled from? 100 feet AGL to 10,000. Intermittent by notice to air missions. But most importantly, the Jacksonville Center is the one that controls that airspace. So if I needed to operate in there, I would need to contact them and get authorization. Any questions on that? Cool. All right, so here's a slide over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop out so you guys just see the slide. So I'll stop share, come in with the new share, and then we'll put back into the slide, and here we go. So what you should see up here, of course, is the slide where we left off, and I'll move on. This is where I want you to focus. If you're looking in your legend, remember there's picket fence, a blue one, and a magenta. So let's walk our way through that. Obviously, you know, I'm pretty concerned that you guys know this because there's another hint. This is the only place you find out who controls those is the legend on the sectional charts. Okay, so I think I mentioned this last Wednesday, but I'll reiterate it again. The military can operate in any one of these special use airspaces here. The FAA specifically defines those areas and their intended use, if you will. So I'm going to describe to you what is the military operating area, how do I recognize it on the map, but most importantly, as you can see here in red, that is the FAA's definition. You need to know that, hint, hint. All right, moving on. So how do I know it's an MOA? It is a magenta picket fence. It'll usually have the name of that particular MOA, just like it did for the Buford 1 MOA, if you recall. But most importantly, what is it? It's a military training activities that necessitate acrobatic or abrupt flight maneuvers. That's its definition. I put a little thing in my mind, military training, acrobatic, and abrupt flight maneuvers. That's just me. However you guys want to think about it, that's up to you. Next, a prohibited area. And I think this is exactly where we left off last week. So a prohibited area, first off, it's going to be a blue picket fence, and I'll have a P for prohibited, and then whatever the number of that respective prohibited area is. And the definition is it's established for security or other reasons associated with national welfare. This is actually the picture of Camp David. So you can imagine you're not going to be able to ever fly there. Next, restricted areas. So how do I know a restricted area on a map? I'm going to see a blue picket fence, and it'll have an R in there along with the number of whatever restricted area that is. In this case, it's 4401 A and B. It's Camp Shelby. It's in Mississippi. If anybody was familiar with it, I used to be down there quite often. The definition is its restricted area denotes existence of unusual, often invisible hazards to aircraft. Anybody want to take a guess what possibly actions are going on in that area?
Flight test.
Technically it's not invisible, but that's artillery ranges. That's right there. So you can probably understand why often unusual and hazardous to aircraft, that would not be a good place for you to be flying around. So that was our restricted area. All right, let's go to the next one. Alert areas. First off, how am I going to know alert areas? And this is actually kind of pretty close down there where you are. With Corpus Christi, of course, we train a lot of pilots, Navy and Marine Corps that are down there. And the way I would recognize it, of course, is going to be magenta picket fence. It'll be an A with whatever the number is of that respective alert area. And the definition, it's a high volume of pilot training. And in fact, they even have a little box here. It says high volume of helicopter and seaplane traffic. What is out here in the Gulf of Mexico?
Water.
Congratulations. You have just won. Well done. Thank you very much. Thanks for playing. No, not only water. How about the oil derricks and platforms that are out there? So that's why you're going to have a lot of traffic back and forth there, seaplanes and helicopters bringing supplies, workers, et cetera, et cetera. So that's why that whole area is an alert area. And this one, it happens to be A381. Okay, questions? All right, let's move on. All right, next one's warning areas. And of course, we have those all off the coast of our great country here. And how do I know it's a warning area? Well, it's going to be a blue picket fence and it's going to have a W and then whatever the warning area is. This one's 237 Bravo. What's the definition? It warns non-participating pilots of potential danger. That starts from 3 nautical miles from our coast and goes all the way out to international waters. That's our little buffer for everybody else to stay away from. Any questions with those? Cool, moving on. All
Hey,
right,
Tony,
hello, sir.
how are you? Just dropped in to say hi.
Awesome. Good. Love to have you on board. Okay, so the next one here we have is, it is a special use airspace, but we don't actually outline them on our maps. And these are called CFAs, or controlled firing areas. I have a real good analogy when I describe these CFAs. So CFAs are, they either have spotter aircraft that are out there, or they have people that are out there with binoculars looking for other aircraft. It's, so to speak, an area where the military went and they set up and said, we're going to do a little exercise here, maybe a day or two activity. And if there's any airplanes in the facility, then we'll stop our operations until they pass, and then we'll start back up again. Here's my analogy, and you'll all remember this forever and ever. If you've ever played sports out in the street, for instance, baseball, stickball, hockey, or something of that nature, and what happens when a vehicle comes down the road? We all stop, get off the road, let the vehicle pass, and then we can all start playing again. That's the exact same way control firing areas are. That's why you don't see them depicted on a map. And once again, here's the big takeaway. I've been beating up on this drum for a while here, special use airspace. You can find out who controls that once again by going to the sectional chart on the legend on the sectional chart. So I'm going to once again kind of give you a drive-by show of what that was again. And here's my screen so everybody can see it. I think that's the easiest way for me to be able to show it to you. So as you can remember right here, I'm just going to zoom out just to here. This was your sectional chart. Remember, I showed you, you can take your sectional chart. You can go to the page, find out if it's current information. This is the legend for symbology on your map. That's not the one we're after for special use airspace. We're after this one down here. I'll blow it up so you can read it. That says special use airspace on this particular sectional chart. That's what it's all about. So as we were looking at our 5304, that's a restricted area, for instance, it's from 10,000, but not to include flight level 18,000 by notice to air missions 24 hours in advance. And the Washington Center is the one that has authority over that. And if you wanted to, you could tune to that frequency and contact them if you needed to. Questions on that once again? Cool, we're done. All right, let's move up back to our slides and get right going. Bam. Okay, so let's press on again here. And I just showed you what a sectional chart is through SkyVector of how to be able to get this. This is what they look very similar. This is the printed version of those things. I'll give you a couple different options. They're not the most popular animals anymore. In other words, they are printed, but most pilots don't use them. They're going to utilize the electronic version, if you will, a lot easier. It's updated. My suggestion for those of you that are educators, I would go to your local airport and just walk in and say, I'm looking to see if you have any old sectionals hanging around. And I almost guarantee you they're going to have an old box in the back that's all dusty, full of these things, and they'd be more than happy to give them away to you. And they are great training tools that you can use in your classroom to be able to do it. That's a huge suggestion for you. I just showed you on SkyVector how you can go achieve and get those sectionals through there. So I'm going to back up one last time so make sure you guys fully understood how to be able to retrieve the sectional through SkyVector. And so this will be my 30-second SkyVector class for you as well. If you desire to pull it up on a computer and follow along, that's fine. You can do that as well. Now let me get back and share my screen. here for Sky Vector, and I think you'll find it beneficial for you. All right, so what you can see here is Sky Vector. I'm going to try and just navigate around here a few things. It's just a quick drive-by so you guys have some exposure to this. If you'll notice right here in the center where my cursor is, that's a crosshair. Wherever I type in up here in the search bar, so for instance, Savannah, I'm going to show you, I'm going to go to my second favorite place, of course, besides home here is Boston. So I'm going to click on that. You notice the crosshair goes directly over the top of that airport here. So wherever I typed in my search bar, that's the airport ID, obviously, that's where that crosshair is going to be centered on. And as we slide across the top over here, here is the time at Greenwich, England. Remember their time zones currently right now on the East Coast, we're 4 hours away. Here is the Latin long, which will be in the next lesson that we'll cover. And then the next thing I'd like to show you is what we call the layers. So I'm going to click on layers. And I'm going to click on this box here called text weather, which would give you your METAR and your TAF. Do you notice all these little dots all of a sudden came up on the map? By all the no screen showing, I can see that you found that. Really appreciate that. But anyways, see all these little boxes that are right here. If I hover my cursor over these little dots, you can see those are the weather reports. So that's pretty cool. That's how you can get your METARs if you wanted to. You can hover over that respective airport. Some airports, such as Boston, rather large airports, will also have what we call the TAF. We haven't covered the TAF yet. I've exposed you to a METAR, but have not covered TAFs. TAFs are terminal aerodrome forecasts, and I'll do that later here next week. Okay, so if I chose under layers, text weather, those are the little balls that come up here. Next thing I'd like to show you is if you check the box TFR, temporary flight restrictions, you see there is one right here. There's a flight hazard that's right here from surface to 2,400 feet. I'm going to bounce out a little bit here. I'm going to click off layers so that box gets out of here. And I'm going to zoom out. And I'm going to show you, oh, looky there. We have VIP visit going to be in New York City. Imagine that. So that's a TFR. What's pretty cool about Sky Vector is watch. If I click on it, it's going to bring me up that exact TFR and tell me what's going on during that time frame and tell you the parameters of it. In other words, what altitudes, what are the dimensions around that TFR, what is the time frame that it's good for, et cetera, et cetera. So really pretty cool to be able to do that. Questions on that? All righty.
Not much of a question. Just a comment. I remember when we saw this earlier when in South Carolina, Joey showed us the TFR when President Biden came by.
Yes, sir.
So it's really interesting to see it on this map.
Yeah, it is. What's pretty cool is I'm going to take off all the weather dots because it get pretty irritating. But now I'm just showing TFR. So I'm going to zoom out and let's look at the good old USFA, baby.
Actually, I do have one question because I even had this during when it was in
Sure.
South Carolina. Why do they do multiple of them rather than just one massive one? Because even during the time when Biden was visiting South Carolina,
Right.
they had like 6, 7, 8 TFRs like set up, just that all basically kind of overlapped each other. There was some that didn't even do anything other than just get overlapped entirely.
Wow. To answer that question directly, I'd have to see what those were to be able to dissect them. So we can, in other words, take a look here. This one here is going to start what? Tomorrow it's going to start Greenwich time. Remember all times you can see the Z there. That's telling you it's a Greenwich. And this one's only surface up to about 3,000 feet. I got another one up here. And that's once again, another one. So you can see they're doing a little road trip here. So this time frame went from 1400 Zulu to 2015. This one here went from 1400 to 1530. So they're going to be in this area for just a little bit, and then they're going to race down here. And I believe that's Orangeburg. So Columbia, and then they're going to race down here. So obviously we're in the campaign season. They're going to have a lot of TFRs here coming up here, as you can imagine.
There's a lot of moving TFRs as well, too. Part of that question.
Yes.
So the reason why they
Go ahead.
overlap is because
Yeah.
Okay,
Mhm.
Yeah, they could be going from point A to point B. I mean, you can see right here, this is down here around security. So what do we got here? Are we doing a launch? No, this is at Mayport, so they're not going to be launching any aircraft around there. But they've pretty much boxed this area out for a time frame. So if we can also go back here to Sky Vector, if they were launching, they would have a huge one that would go out into the ocean. You would see there. You've got the one famous one, of course, over Disney World. That's there constantly. It's funny, it's still named a temporary flight restriction, although it is permanent. It'll never go away. It is what it is. You will also see a TFR come up over the ball games. Normally they will shoot those at. So Major League Baseball, they will definitely put one out in a week or two in advance of the Super Bowl or the national championship are some good examples of that as well. So anyways, just kind of got off a little off tangent of that, but I'd like to show you one other thing. When we go back up under layers, I am going to deselect TFR, so those will go away, but I'm going to select segments. Those are significant meteorological events, such as heavy thunderstorms. Unfortunately, could be tornadoes, hails. Do you see the big kind of trapezoidal box that kind of came up here? I'm going to zoom out and click off layers again, so that kind of gets out of our way. But now you can see the trapezoidal area, and I'll try and come all the way out to the good old US of A. What I find pretty cool about these, quite honestly, is most of us have our own favorite weather app that we have there. So if you got one of those favorite weather apps and you matched it up here with Sky Vector, you would see how those things kind of really come exactly the same way. So give an example, some of the information you might be able to get it. So I'm going to click on this one right here. And it says convective segment is thunderstorms moving from 30 degrees at 10 knots, and the tops of these clouds are at 45,000 feet. So something a little Cessna won't get over. Cessnas normally only have a ceiling about 10 to 11,000 feet. And there's an old rule of thumb about a Cessna, you need to fly 20 miles around because you will never get over these things. They develop so fast. That's just, once again, another example here of what kind of layers you can have on your chart. So the three most common that are selected here, and you can see all of a sudden what your map's going to look like, are your text. There's all your weather stations and TFR. So you can start to see these little guys kind of pop up everywhere. And then your segments. If I'm not mistaken, that's the default. When you first log into Sky Vector, those are the three that'll always be up and selected. That's there for you. So one or two other little drive-bys, and then that's it. The map that we're looking at right now is the World VFR map. So I'm going to drill in a little bit closer here. In fact, let me go back up to Boston. So I'm going to hit enter, and it takes me right into Boston, and I'm going to zoom in right into Boston. You see, got a ton of weather stations that are around there. You can also see we still got the convective segment that's on here. But the other thing I wanted to share with you is, do you notice that I have the view that I'm seeing right now is in the New York sectional? So if I want to see that sectional chart itself, and this was the purpose of bringing you into Sky Vector, what I would just click on New York. And now it doesn't look much like the map has changed, but if I zoom out, guess what? That's that whole sectional map. And one of the very first things I always do is I go to the title page, and you can see how these little layers can get a little annoying. So I'm going to take all those things off. But I'm going to zoom in here so you guys can get a chance to see the dates. Once again, 8 September to 3 November. So we're looking at pretty much current data that's sitting here in front of us. And that's how we get to an individual sectional through Sky Vector. If I wanted to get back to the big map, all I would do is come up here and click on World VFR, and it's going to bring me right back to the map. If I click up my search bar, click on Boston, bam, it centers myself right back over Boston again. I'm back where I started. Any questions quickly on Sky Vector? Didn't want to spend a whole lot of time, but I just wanted to make you a little bit familiar. And you easiest way to get familiarity is just to play on it on your own. I think it's important to understand this tool and how valuable it can be for you. It is part of your checklist. When we start going on the last night, I'm going to individually take you through the checklist that we as CrossFlight have provided to you guys that are out there. And I purposely, when I create them, I put them in Word format so that you guys can change the letterhead if you want, you remove things if you want to, whatever you want to do, that's up to you. But at least I gave you one that we use operationally within our job. So you'd be able to have what actually the quote professionals are out there utilizing. Any questions for me? All right, let me get back to the PowerPoint here. Kind of got a little bit off here, but I hope you'll find that valuable. If not tonight, you'll definitely will in the future. Okay, so one of the last types of airspace, remember we talked about controlled, we talked about uncontrolled, which your G airspace. We just got done talking special use airspace. Now the one airspace I'm really only going to focus on is under other airspace is what it's termed. And that's going to be MTRs, military training routes. And you can see them depicted here on these two snapshots here. You can see this light gray line that's right here. IR 148, for instance. IR 148. The key thing to remember, there's two key things to remember about MTRs. If it is a 3-number MTR, then it starts at 1,500 feet above ground level and goes up. 3-number starts at 1,500 and goes up. The IR in front of it only means instrument route, or if it's at VR, such as these ones down here. Oops. Such as these down here, VR 1105 and 1106. Those are visual routes. And here's what you need to know. If it's a 4-number MTR, that means it starts at the surface and goes up to 1,500 feet. So that could potentially be a conflict for us. And the reason for that is, what's the maximum altitude I can normally fly my aircraft anyways? $400 feet, remember? 400 feet is the maximum I can fly, or 400 feet above a structure. So if I was inspecting a tower, then it's 400 feet above that. But I like to use this little code. This is Tony's little thing. And we come right here. So usually the routes are below 10,000, as I mentioned, and a 3-number or 4-number. And for the 4-number, I like to equate it to the 4 letters in the word dead, DEAD. Quick and easy. Remember, I'm a Marine, so I eat crayons. I got to be real simple. That's the way I got to kind of look at things. Question might be is, what are MTRs? They're the military version of the Autobahn, for instance. So they jump on these guys and they cook it as they get there, from anywhere from 250 over to 300 knots. And it's their way to be able to move from point A to point B. I won't say it's exclusive to them. In other words, there's other aircraft that could go across these routes, but it's their normally speed lane. That's what that might be.
Hey,
Next.
Tony,
Yes, sir.
there's another piece to that too, is that on some of those routes, they're not restricted to the 500-foot altitude over populated areas in many cases, because there's helicopters and
Yes.
things like that. So they could be operating low altitude, high speed routes on some of them with fighter jets, things like that.
Yes, sir. And that would normally be the 4-number versions. Yes, sir. And the those and of course helicopters, quite honestly, my affectionate term for them is they're real pain in the you know what.
Well, especially with drones.
Well, and that's because they don't traditionally fly, for instance, a descent pattern into an airport or out of an airport. They just tend to go, and I know I used to fly them a bunch. We would find a major highway literally, and we would follow that highway. There was no sense in us paying attention to the map. I know where I-95 is. And if I get off that exit, that military base is right over here. So that's usually the quickest way for us to have been able to do those. One last thing about MTRs is please understand that they are Class E airspace. And that only makes sense, right? Because they're like those federal airways. They're between airports or between waypoints. That's why they're Class E. Next. All right, here comes your do not do list. These are all the shake your finger things that you can't do, right? We can't fly over hospitals, military installations, power plants, prisons. I've actually flown over the one down near in Savannah, had to give them a call, let them know that we were going to be out there flying over the I-16 that was there to make sure that they weren't getting too concerned. There's been a number of reports, people utilizing drones to drop contraband into the prison yards. You can't fly at private airports unless you have the permission of the owner of that airport. Schools, although there's no federal rule that's really attached to those, some states have made it prohibited areas for you not to be able to fly. So as I put a note here, kind of treat them as sensitive areas, but check your local laws and municipality, state, or local, such as a county, town, etc. Now, as far as stadiums go, sure enough, it's coming up on 7 o'clock. So most of the major league ball teams on the East Coast will be starting up. So not within 3 nautical miles can you fly near those ballparks, and 1 hour before or 1 hour after. If it's a big one, as I mentioned previously, Super Bowl or national championship or World Series, they're going to issue a TFR, temporary flight restriction, for those. Although the beautiful areas probably get some great pictures, U.S. national parks, fish, wildlife management areas, those areas are all off limits as well. And of course, wildfires on the left coast, as we know, every year they tend to have those things out there. They issue TFRs, but they run into problem time after time with drones interfering with their operations that are out there. Notice to air missions has been changed, and notice to air, or used to be notice to airmen, is now notice to air mission. I just point that out from a historical perspective. One thing I want you to please be aware of is that TFRs, temporary flight restrictions, are a form of a NOTAM, or notice to air missions. And they could be issued for a number of things. We saw some of those for flights for important people, such as we saw those VIP TFRs earlier. Inoperable lights on, tall obstructions. They even have what they call a bird tam. I'll be able to show you what a notice to air mission is. If you recall, on night 1, I gave you websites and apps to put in your toolbox. notams.aim.faa.gov. So I'm going to take you there. This is notams.aim.faa.gov. So I'm going to give you a real quick share over to that right now. So we can go take a look at that, and you guys get a good drive-by of what that is. So I'm going to share my screen here real quick so you guys will be able to see that. If you recall, if I type in notams.aim.faa.gov, this is the screen that's going to come up for you. So I'm going to take you step by step how this is. This is part of your checklist. We'll get to that. But more importantly here, I want you to just, as a drive-by, some familiarity what this is. We're going to go to NOTAM search, click on NOTAM search. It's going to come up with these standards you read and understood statements. Click yes. And now this is the search bar for finding your notice to air missions. So an example here, I'm going to choose, let's try Hilton Head, KHXD, Hilton Head. I'll do a search. And these are all the NOTAMs associated with that airport here. You'll notice that they'll classify them as either aerodrome, procedure, communication, or obstruction. And I'm just going to focus on the obstruction one that's right here. My point about this, if you recall from the slide, it says it could be obstructions out there. It's a light on the tower. So it's not necessarily something right physically at that airport. As you can see, this tower is located 7.6 nautical miles west of the airport. And that tower is 829 feet high. So if I was a pilot, particularly a helicopter pilot, that'd be something I'd be a little bit concerned about and need to know that that light is not on. So NOTAMs, please remember this about NOTAMs. They are generally temporary in nature. And you can see that. Hopefully within the next week or two, they're going to get this light fixed is what they're going to be after. So that's why it's temporary in nature. But it is an obligation of yourself as a remote pilot in command that you need to check these as well. They might interfere with your operations. So that's NOTAMs. So without me going to another screen, I'm just going to click here, and this is tfr.faa.gov. Okay. This is your quick way if you ever want to find out what the TFRs are for your particular area. The easiest way to do this is just select your state. South Carolina, for example, press go. And we had a TFR, if you recall, we just looked at it. It said there was a VIP up in Columbia. It's going to be starting tomorrow timeframe. If I wanted to see exactly what that one was, all I'd have to do is click here, and it's going to bring up the elements associated with that respective TFR. So that's how we're able to walk through a NOTAMs, and that's how we're able to walk through a TFR. Let me jump back here now to the PowerPoint, and we'll pick up from there. So what you should see is where we left off, notams.aim.faa.gov. And as I mentioned, we just did a drive-by here of what TFRs are, and they are there to protect the persons or property in the air. Good examples, like we mentioned on here, protect the president, vice president, or others. We know there's a VIP trip that's scheduled in Columbia was an example. They also do TFRs, of course, for safe environment disaster relief. Hopefully we won't have any of these hurricanes, tropical storms here, although we're in the season. And they also will do those for safe environment for space agency operations. That's the screenshot that I just took you to, tfr.faa.gov, showed you how to search and be able to find one. And lastly here, this is near and dear to Jerry, of course, but the primary purpose of air traffic controllers to prevent collision between an aircraft, but most importantly, to have a safe, organized, efficient, and expedite the traffic flow in the national airspace system. That's what we're after. Any questions, comments, concerns regarding about airports, or I should say airspace? Good answer. Awesome. All
Hey,
right. let's
Tony,
go. Yes, sir.
I don't know if you told them about some of the tools that they can use with looking at actual live traffic around airports when they're operating near airports, but they can log into FlightAware and some other third-party software to depict airplanes operating in and out of airports. That helps a lot when you're operating drones.
Yes, sir. We did that as the very first night. That was probably about our 5th slide in. And the thing to note about that, thank you, Jerry. The thing to note about FlightAware, though, it's only aircraft that have filed the flight plan, and not aircraft. All aircraft have to fly a flight plan. And with that said, I may not catch every cat and dog that's on there. And I think that's a good news story if you think about what remote ID will do, or ADSB for fixed wing aircraft will be able to allow us to do, is be able to see that, and the integrated elements that go between ADSB and drones to be out there. That's good. But any additional tools that I can get some visibility that's out there would be is definitely helpful.
Yeah, we actually saw helicopters and everything in the Hilton Head Airport when we were operating there. You know, we could see the helicopters low level, 600-700 feet coming
Yes,
and
sir.
going from the airport. We
Yes,
also
sir.
tuned into the airport frequencies so we could hear the departures that came off of the airports, you know?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
All right, everybody, here's our next one. As I can see, I see nobody's faces. That's awesome. I really appreciate that. Maybe I'll go blank and try and work through this. We'll see how that works. Okay. So sectional chart reading here is the next one. And primarily what we're going to deal with here, of course, is we're going to deal with lat and longs. Some of you may have some experience with dealing with lat and longs. Others you may not. And that's why we put this and airspace in the front portion of your curriculum. Those tend to be some challenging areas here. We've got 55 minutes. I will be surprised if we can get through this. If we do, that's a bonus plan. If not, I don't care. We have another class coming. We'll make sure that you guys are going to get comfortable with this. All right, so let's move on. So what am I going to cover? As you can see here, lat longs, some of the formats, you might be able to see how they're listed. We did cover sectional charts. I will cover bulletins, and I'll show you the ones that are in your testing supplement. I have covered most of the components here within your sectional chart. In other words, the symbology. I'm going to reference what we call the Aeronautical Chart Users Guide. If you recall, on the very first night, I took you to where your resources were located within the LMS course resources. Within there, you have the latest and greatest copy of the Aeronautical Chart User's Guide. And I believe that's edition 13, if I'm not mistaken. Types of airspace, you guys are so familiar with that. B, C, D, E, meaning the 4 types of E, of course. I'll cover some other symbols that we didn't cover here when we went through the legend. And then how do we do elevations and measuring distances on a map? And of course, if you wanted to know any additional airport data information, how would I be able to do that? And where would I find that information? So let's kind of start basically here, and we're going to start with lats and longs. First off, you notice how I said it. It's always lat first or latitude first, and then longitude. That's the way we always got to kind of talk our way through these things. Some very important keys here before I start kind of going around the globe here. For latitude, our form of reference is the equator. It's a 0 degree latitude line. For longitude, our reference is a 0 degree or prime meridian. We've heard that earlier when we were talking about time, for instance, because a prime meridian goes to Greenwich, England, if we remember. Okay, so let's go back over here and now start kind of picking away here at latitude. All right, so latitude, the actual lines run east and west, but they move north and south. So they move from 0 degrees at the equator to 90 degrees at the North Pole, and of course, -90 at the South Pole. Let's go over here and take a look at longitude. Longitude, on the other hand, it runs north and south, yet moves west or moves to the east, and it comes around to roughly the international date line on the other side of the world in the Pacific. That's out there. Okay. Now, why I want to pause here for just seconds, because I have a picture of the good old great North America and good old US of A. So for latitude, if I was to ask you on cardinal headings, meaning north, south, east, or west, latitude would always be what? North, south, east, or west when I'm talking North America. From my reference line, meaning the equator, what would the latitude be in North America?
North.
North.
Always, 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 always north. Always. Okay. If I was talking longitude, where is North America in reference to the prime meridian? North, south, east, or west?
Probably west.
Always, 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 always west. Okay. So we got that out of the way. Latitude in North America will always be north, and longitude will always be west. Period. That's all there is to it. Okay. Next. So I'd also like you to kind of think of lat and longs. It's like a ladder, and probably the easiest way is how I kind of depicted here on this slide here. So latitude, like we said, latitude kind of like the rungs on the ladder, and longitude is like the rails on the ladder. That's how you'd be able to do that. So it kind of looks like a grid square already, or the real term we like to utilize is quadrants. It's what it looks like. So I think you would all agree, if you remember back to school, got some educators that are here online anyways, but there's 360 degrees in a circle, and there is 60 minutes in a degree. And then there are 60 seconds in a minute, just like on a clock, right? We're all familiar with that. We mentioned that the lines of latitude are like the steps, and longitude are like the rails of the ladder. So once again, as a review, 60 minutes in a degree and 60 seconds in a minute. Don't forget that. Bam. Okay. I'm going to hold off on figure 21 for now. All right, this is a little fun fact. We just kind of toss this slide in here, kind of find the only place in the world where the 0 degree latitude line, meaning the equator, and the 0 degree prime meridian intersect. And it's just off the coast of Africa. What's pretty cool about this, I actually saw a little special on it. This little town right here with the Accra, I guess would be the pronunciation of it. I'll tell you what, they can sell the buttload out of some t-shirts. claiming that they're the only place in the world 0, 0. Well, technically not, but it's the only land that's relatively close to that. All right, now let's see how our maps are kind of broken out. The first thing I want you to kind of think about is go back what I mentioned. There is 60 minutes in a degree. Now, when I look at a map, I've got all this symbology that's on there. I've got the airspace, I got these dashed magenta lines, I got little flags, I got dots, I've got all sorts of things that are on here. I got the miscellaneous info with highways, I got railways, I got all of this stuff that's on here. So that's why it could be kind of difficult at times to be able to pick things out. But what I want you to be aware of is that there is actually quadrants all over these maps. And if I was to remove all of that stuff, it would look like this. So these quadrants are 30 by 30 minute quadrants. So once again, how many minutes in a degree? 60. And if there's 60 minutes, it means it's going to take 2 of these quadrants to give me a degree, whether I go left, right, up, or down. Would everybody agree with that?
Roger.
Okay. With that as well, what I want you to think about here is you could also see that there is little tick marks on each one of these quadrants. Those tick marks are 1 minute because it's 30 by 30 minute quadrants. So every 5th one, it's a little bit larger. And every 10, it's a little bit larger. And it's just to help us be able to navigate around those respective sections on the map when we're trying to find a particular location. Okay. Those little grids are set up that way. So one basic thing I want you to remember is if I go up, I am going further away from the equator. Am I not? I'm getting
Roger.
closer to the North Pole. If I was to go down, then I'm getting closer to my equator. So whatever point that somebody would give me on a map, if I use that as a reference and I'm going closer to the equator, that means it's going to be something less than this point that I'm about ready to provide you. Would you guys agree with that? Okay. If I was to do the same thing for longitude, if I go to the left, I'm going further west or further away from the prime meridian. So I'm going to be increasing in numerical value. Okay. And if I go to the right, I'm going to get closer to my prime meridian. So I'd be decreasing in value. So if I was to break them all up like this is what you'd really kind of see on the map. Now I've got a couple different blocks here. I got your 30 by 30 minute quadrants. And just to illustrate, I had to go 2 quadrants to be able to change a degree. So let's just do a quick little exercise here. I'm going to start with latitude because that's what we always do. So this line at the very bottom of my giant box here, if that makes it easier for you to think about, is the 48 degrees, 0 minutes, 0 seconds. Okay. If I go up 1 block to this very next line that's running east and west, that latitude would actually be 48 degrees, 30 minutes, because I just went up 1 block. If I was to go to the very next line going across my map, east to west, then I went another 30 minutes. So now that became a degree because I did 30 here, 30 plus 30 is 60, which is a new degree. Any questions on that? Let's do longitude. So we're going to start here on the far right-hand side of my box at -101. And once again, if I go 1 box over to the very next line that's running north and south to the west, I actually went 30 minutes. So it'd be -101, 30 minutes. If I went 1 more box of 30 minutes, then add the 2 together and I will actually get to another degree because I did 60 minutes. Any questions with that? awesome. You guys are unbelievable. So as a quick review, now I throw all of this junk back up on top there. All the symbology, the airspaces, the little highways, the little obstructions that are out there, little flags, etc., words, everything on there. But please realize within there is that same 30 by 30 minute grid. And if I go up from whatever my starting point is, I'm going to be increasing in latitude. Or if I go to the left, I'm going to be increasing in longitude. Those are key points for you to remember. Up and to the left, I increase. Down and to the right, I'm going to be decreasing. Okay. All right. Now it's time to do a little exercise. Woohoo. This is one, your palms are going to get sweaty. Your brain is going to start working. This is going to be awesome. All right. So what I'd like you to do is please go to figure 21. And when you're there, just give me a thumbs up for the camera peoples that I can see. That would be awesome. Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. All right. Thank you, Jay. All right. So I'm going to give you a huge hint. Take this with you forever and ever and ever. It's a Tony tip. That's what I call it. Okay. So anytime somebody asks you to find a location on a map, here's the key. I want you to find where the degree, 0 minute, 0 seconds for latitude, and the degree for 0 minutes and 0 seconds longitude intersect. And on this map, let's just use this as my starting point. Can you see about the third of the way down from the top of the page is the 48 degree 0 minute 0 second line? And do you see roughly about 3 inches in from the right hand side, you can see where the negative 101 0 minute 0 degree longitude line is, correct? It's going north and south. 101. Can't miss it. If you found 48, just find where they intersect. It says 48 and it says 101 should be right next to each other.
Mhm.
Okay. So my example here is that's where we found that's 48 degrees, 0 minutes, 0 seconds latitude. That's negative 101, 0 minutes, 0 seconds longitude. So that's the point that you always want to try and locate when somebody's going to give you a point on the map. Here's my example. I'd like for you to be able to tell me what the Latin long is for this point I'm about ready to provide you. If you look within that little box underneath the 48 and the 101, it says 26 in blue, does it not?
Roger.
Right above that, you're gonna see it looks like a little M&M, doesn't it? Like a
Mhm.
little teepee. I want to know what the lat long is to the center of that little M&M, please. So if I'm at 48 degrees, we always do latitude first. We're going to kind of do this semi together. So I'll show you how we kind of work this out. If I was to go down approximately 4 inches to the very next line that's running east and west across my map, what actually is that line of latitude?
47.
48, 30,
47
47, 30.
30, 47 30, right? We just went down one box of 30 minutes. See how you can catch yourself? We
Mhm.
only did one box. We didn't do 2 boxes. So one box or one quadrant is the technical name for it. So that would be 47 30. So just to kind of help you out. So I know where that M&M is. It's got to be something less than 48 degrees, but something more than 47 degrees, 30 minutes, correct?
Mhm.
Okay, so get on it. Tell me what that latitude is.
$47.50.
Smoked it, girl. 4750. Outstanding. Outstanding. Absolutely right. Okay. Now don't get a big head now, but all right, you did the latitude right on. Now, once again, we can see here, I've got the -101 degree longitude line. And I can see that that M&M is to the right of that -101. So it's got to be something what?
Less,
Less or more?
less.
Less, absolutely. I'm getting closer to my reference point. And you know what? You could just barely see the other line that's going north and south the way they did this screenshot on this page. Everybody see that?
Roger.
Okay, so really, what would that line of longitude really be?
130.
130. See, you guys are smoking it, man. I'm loving this. All right. So now we
145.
know it's, uh-oh, what'd you say? What do you think it is?
For the M&M, it is 145.
Damn, spot on.
Almost.
4750 for latitude and -100 degrees, 45 minutes for longitude. Outstanding. Okay, now that you got a big head, I'm giving you one more. If you guys see the number 3, the red little ball down in the lower left-hand portion of figure 21 here, the number 3, everybody see that? The little red ball down there, it's got a 3 inside that.
Roger.
Okay, I want to know what the Latin long is to the center of that number 3. Give me the latitude first. Remember, we always do latitude first.
Twenty-three, 47, 23 something.
I had 4724. I
Yeah.
can buy that.
Mhm.
Yeah, my little rule of thumb is if you're within 3 or 4, I'm good with that. If you're 5 or more, then we got some issues. But I had 4724 for latitude. Good. What do you got for longitude?
101.18.
Smoked it right on top of it. Perfect. -101.18. All right. I'm going to let you away with one more, and then we're going to press on with what we got rest of the lesson. If you look next door to figure 22, do you see figure 22 right next door?
Roger.
Okay. Figure 22. I want to know the Latin long for the number 1, that red number 1 in the upper portion here of that map. That red number 1. Once again, the hint was find the closest area where the 2, the lat and the long intersect, and use that as your increasing or decreasing point. I find that's the easiest way to be able to do it. When you think you have the latitude, go ahead, let me know.
$48.25.
48, not 25. Went a little bit
10.
too much.
10.
48.10, absolutely. 48.10. Do you see that big tick mark
Big
right
tick.
there? That's 10 up. It's perfectly go
Oh.
right through the center of it, right?
There you go.
Mhm.
Okay. All right. Now let's jump on that longitude. What you think, Jeff? What do you think?
115.35.
We're going
Negative 115.35.
15. We're going to the left. So aren't we getting further away from Greenwich,
Roger.
England? Yeah.
116.35.
Now we're on it. Good game. Outstanding. All right. Just because we were close, but not close enough, I need that number 3 on the same figure, please. See the number 3 about a third of the way up from the bottom down there. Give you one more practice. I'm telling you, lat longs are huge. It is a huge portion of what you need to know.
Forty-seven, 40.
I had 47.39. I'll go with that. That's
I'll go
good.
Okay.
Okay. And what do we have for longitude? Good job, man. That's awesome.
Negative 116.12.
13, I thought 1 point.
Yeah. And I had 14. So, okay. We're within the area. I'm comfortable with that. Hey, but you got the rhythm now, right? You can kind of see. So once again, I think the key is find where they intersect and then find the next lines and either know whether it's above it, below it, to the left or to the right, and you'll get right on top of it and use those tick marks for you. A handy thing, obviously, let me give you a hint again, what they're going to give you when you go to take the test, they're going to give you one blank piece of paper. So that one blank piece of paper has got a straight edge. So use that just like you would on the ruler, slice and dice your map, line it up appropriately, and you'll smoke it every time. Great job. All right, let's pick up here, back to the slides here. Unfortunately, I have a ton of these exercises I can also send you guys if you desire. So let's move on. All right, when we talk about lat longs, there's various ways you can actually see these things displayed. You can say, I'm going to focus more down here at the very bottom right here, where you have the yellow highlighted areas. You can have them seen, as you just heard me say, 33 degrees, 59 minutes, 52 seconds, and the cardinal heading placed in there of north. Or sometimes we're really lazy and we know if it's 33 degrees, then it's above the equator, for example. I don't put the north on there. It's not to say it's incorrect. It is right. But where we can get into a little bit of an issue here is just by putting the 80 degrees in longitude. Technically, that's not correct because I need to have that negative because it's to the west of the prime meridian. Okay. Or if I just put the west in there, then we already know where it is. So that's a given. The point is, sometimes we can be kind of lazy in the US. And I'll give you an example. You know, when we talked airport IDs, we know that K is supposed to be there and we drop that off. So please understand there is nothing right or wrong with these. It's just a way to be able to display it. All right, the next thing we're going to talk about is degree decimal here. And I'm going to show you, you're going to have to know this, of how to convert from DMS, I call it degree minute seconds, to degree decimal, and you're going to have to know how to go backwards so that you can be able to find it. The reality of it is our maps are degree minute seconds, but a more accurate way would be is to find degree decimal. Our maps are not formatted that way, so I'm going to have to know how to go from one to the other is why this is important. And you see this last note I put down here at the bottom of the slide, 1 degree of latitude is 60 nautical miles, right? Because a minute is a nautical mile, okay? So 1 nautical mile is equal to 1 minute. I'm going to go back in time here for a minute. So I'm going to go back here and I want you guys to think of something when we go back to the globe. When we talk latitude, when I move from lines of latitude, yes, 1 nautical mile is 1 minute all the way up to the pole. What happens with longitude, though, as the closer we get to the pole? What happens to those lines of longitude? Don't they all kind of,
Shorter.
yeah,
I see,
kind of, exactly. So for the most part, in where we are in North America, ours are still fairly close to 1 nautical mile for 1 minute of longitude. But as you can see, closer and closer I'm going to get to the poles, they're actually going to be a little bit smaller than that. So just something for you to be aware of. All right, so I'd like you to do this for me, please. I know it's going to sound pretty elementary, but I got some educators here, so we're all kind of used to that stuff. My suggestion would be is to take 1 blank piece of paper, if you would, please. And on the top of it, I would make a heading as follows. I would go DMS to DD. That's just how I usually refer to it. DMS to DD, and we're just going to actually walk through one together of how to do this. So DMS to DD, and if you would just write down underneath that 33, 24, 36 north, and then negative 80, 21 minutes, 50 seconds west. So if you write those lat longs, and then we're just going to take it step by step. So if humor me and don't read through each portion of this, that way it'll kind of help you as we kind of work through it together, please. You'll see what I mean. All right, so if you've written that down latitude, we're just going to take the latitude one first. So 33, 24, 36, just take the 33 degrees and drop it down a couple lines, and it's going to be all by itself. We're not going to touch that degree at all. So 33 degrees remains all by itself. What we're going to do next is we're going to take the 24 minutes, and I want you to divide that by 60 and tell me what you get, please.
0.4.
0.4. And I like to do 0.400. I like to add 2 zeros. Now I arm wrestled the student one time because they said, you can't do that. I said, it's a placeholder. They're there. They're always there. Get over yourself. Okay. All right. The next thing is, if you would, is take the 36, please, 36 seconds, and divide that by 3,600. And the reason we do that is we got what, 60 seconds in a minute, and then we got 60 minutes in a degree, right? So that's why it's 3,600. All right, so tell me what you come up with there, please.
0.01.
0.010. Okay. And can you line up the decimal points for me? So you just line up those decimal points, and then guess what you do? You just add them together. And I should come up with 33.410 north, right? Can't forget our cardinal heading. Make sure we know where we're at. And then just take let's do the longitude one. We had a quick practice. What do? We take the degree, drop that down all by its lonesome. So it's negative 80 all by its lonesome. And then we, once again, do the same thing. The 21 minutes, divide that by 60. And what do you get?
0.350.
Did you use a calculator?
21 divided by 60, real slow again, please.
Yeah, 0.330.
0.355.
5.
So we got 0.3, and it continues on and on and on, right? 3, something like that. Is that right?
Rounding off to 5.
3.5.
Okay. And then we take the 50, divide that by 3,600, because that's 50 seconds. Once again,
I'm not
3,600.
doing that.
And then what do we got?
Using a calculator, 0.013.
Yeah, 1, 3. And that one goes out for a while. It actually goes to
3, yeah.
3.8, something like that, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So that's why.
8.
And that's exactly. And that's why I like us to go to, if you see my note out here on the slide, I said, carry out 4 decimal places and then round to the third. And once again, line the decimal points up, add them, excuse me. And you're going to come up with 0.364 west. Pretty cool. So as you well know, the further out, if I wanted to on my decimal points, I'm going to finally get down to be able to read that license plate. Just for your guys' knowledge, these maps, sectional charts, they're scaled to 1 to 500,000. So, you know, I'm not going to be able to see a license plate there on my map that I'm flying with. But if I'm in a little Cessna, I'm flying 110 miles an hour anyway. So I'm passing that territory in no time. Okay.
Tony,
So
quick one.
yes, sir.
Are we
Jeff.
allowed to bring regular calculators during the testing?
Great question. Something I was going to cover later, but we're here playing with the numbers. Yes. You can bring a non-programmable calculator. And
Right.
this is the extent of the math you'll do. I mean, even longhand, I think we could arm wrestle this one, right? We could probably do that. All right. So let's
Copy.
go to the next one, please. So if you made a heading, I'd like you to make a separate heading on another piece of paper on the same paper,
No,
however you got
also-
enough room. Let's go DD to DMS now, because we got to go from one to the other. This is probably how somebody's going to give you that, to be honest with you anyways, because they're going to be in the real digital world and we're still kind of using these older maps or wider scale maps. Okay, so if you put your little heading that's up there, please write down these lat longs. We're just going to go backwards this time, 33.410 north and our longitude of negative 80.364 west. Okay, so if everybody's done that, we're going to just do the same thing. Let's take latitude first again. Just take the 33 and drop that down all by its lonesome. And then here's the part that everybody kind of gets a little stumbling off. With the 0.410, I'd like you to multiply that 0.410 by 60, please, and tell me what you get.
24.
24 what?
24.6.
24.6. So take the 24 and drop the 24 down. That's now your minutes. Pretty awesome. And I'm left up there with that 0.6, remember? So take that
Times it.
Yep, 0.6, multiply that by 60, and that's going to give me my 36 seconds. Put my cardinal heading of north on there, and I just did my latitude. Pretty cool. All right, now for longitude. I got negative 80, 21, whoops. I got negative 80.364. So I'm going to drop the 80 down by its lonesome, take the 0.364, multiply that by 60. What do you come up with?
21.84.
21.84. So drop down the 21. That's your minute now. And you're left with 0.84, multiply that by 60, and that should give me my seconds, which would be
50.4.
50.4. In this case, we round down to 50 because it's only 2 digits for seconds. And that's how we come up with negative 80, 21 minutes and 50 seconds west. You guys
Nice.
comfortable with that? Pretty cool, right? All right, let's see how
Awesome.
much more we can get in about 22 minutes here. All right, we're familiar here with the sectional charts, and I say familiar in the sense that I've kind of showed you these before. Why do we call them sectional? I know it's going to sound redundant, but it's because it breaks the nation into sectional areas here. In fact, we looked at the Charlotte one earlier. We've seen the Jacksonville one before. We were up there around Boston. We looked at the New York one. It's just the section of the United States. You can go to the FAA site if you desire to, and you can download them in 2 forms if you're interested. You can download them in raster file, which are huge, or you can download them in PDF file, or you can just use SkyVector because it's all right there and it's all updated. Personally, I'd use SkyVector, but I would have the real maps for the kids because you can do a lot of neat things in the classroom with those, for those of you that educators. All right, next. On the sectional, if you remember when I took you into SkyVector, one of the first things I did was what? Slide over and looked at the title page. And I wanted to make sure the dates that it was current. I want you to also realize that they're good for 56 days. Every 56 days, I get a new one that comes out here. Okay. So I want to verify that I'm looking at the latest and greatest information. That's what's out there. The other thing I want you to be aware of is now let's think about it. Let's play with this one I got sitting right in front of me. And you can see I got a note here that says chart update bulletins are no longer published. I got that. That's the real world. Remember, you're learning to do how to operate in the real world, but you also got to remember, I'm going to be taking a test and the test may not be fully updated yet. Here's what happens. In the test, which is this testing supplement, they still have chart bulletins. So I want you to understand what a chart bulletin is, okay? So on this date here, 17 June 2021, for example, you know as well as I do, on the 18th of June, damn, there went a whole nother cell tower. They just built it instantly. So now this map technically is a little bit out of date. So when they have something that they feel would be detrimental or important to aviation safety, they will print a bulletin is what they print. Okay. So you'll have your sectional chart, and then you'll have a bulletins for 56 days. And then when the new chart gets printed, guess what? All those bulletins become the new map. And then we start that whole process again. If anybody's ever dealt with technical publications, you know how we have what we call changes. You know, they'll put those changes that are there. And then when they decide to publish a whole new book, all those changes are incorporated within it. It's the same thing here with bulletins, if you can understand that. Does that make sense to everybody? Good answer. Good. All right. So now let's look at what we call a chart supplement. Okay. Chart supplements are all the airports within that sectional are in a chart supplement because it's called the sectional chart. So this is a supplement to the sectional chart. Okay. So for those of you who have your books, you need to play this little game with me. And I know you're going to be so excited because we've already had a couple games already. So if you would please go to Legend 2. Legend 2 within your publication in your testing supplement. This is the easiest way for me to explain a chart supplement. All right, are you there at Legend 2? Should be on page 1-2. Okay, here's what I like you to do now. Watch my little hands here. So in your left hand, from page 1-2 to page 1-19, you're going to hold all those little pages in your left fingers between your thumb and your forefinger, your left hand. Those are the chart supplement legends. You're going to get my logic here in just a second. So you're going to hold 19 pages in your left hand. And now I want you to go to figure 77 in your right hand. And when you're there, give me an elbow or something, because I know you got both fingers all tied up now. So we just nod or something like that. Okay, good. All right. So if you're on figure 77, what you will see is you're going to see the chart supplement for Pierre, South Dakota, a regional airport, right? And then right below it, don't you see Pine Ridge that's there? A relatively small airport. The point of what I'm sharing with you is those 19 pages are all the potential information that could be listed within a chart supplement. Okay. So instead of them putting a lot of NAs or no, or we don't have that, they only will have that information that's relevant to that particular airport. An example, Boston Logan International is probably got a 3-page chart supplement because it has a lot of those legend items in there. Everybody understand what my point is now? So I wanted to show you is here's all the potential information that could be on a chart supplement. That's the legend, those 19 pages. And here's an example of a chart supplement for you. You guys good with that? Yeah, baby. Okay. All right. So I'm going to do another little drill with you too. Because I'm all about show and tell. So I'm going to flip back to SkyVector here. I want to show you how this stuff works in the real world. All right. So if you guys take a peek here, you should see SkyVector in front of you, and you should see that I have centered it on, let me move this up just a hair. Let's close these, I don't have those. And you can see I've kind of centered it on Savannah. All right, boom, 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 kind of saying. Now, what I'd like to show you is there's 2 ways that you can get a chart supplement right from SkyVector. One of the easiest ways is you can see up here at the top where it says airports. You could click on airports and I could type in KSAV and hit enter. And lo and behold, I'll get this whole information page. Everybody see that? And what I'd like to show you is watch what happens when I take my cursor and hover it over chart supplement. Oh my God, There's a chart supplement right there. Okay, so that is the chart supplement for Savannah's airport. In other words, you could take those 19 pages of potential chart supplement legend and, okay, what is the runway surface? What is the services available that are there? Who is the airport manager, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? Pretty cool. And if I take my cursor and I roll it off of the chart supplement, boink. And if I wanted to go back to my map, I just go down here and click on the map. And lo and behold, ta-da, I'm all the way back. So pretty cool. All right, let's go back here to the slide real quick so we can try and get more of this. I got 14 minutes. And that was chart supplement. Here's the next thing. Bam. All right, I talked about the aeronautical charts. You've seen these sectional charts in Sky Vector. I've kind of showed them to you. Here's a very important thing to understand. These maps that you look at are oriented true north. I think when we went to school, they kind of told us there was two types of north, right? One where Santa lives and one where a magnet lives, right? Okay, Santa lives at the true one, the magnet lives over here, okay? Well, what I'd like to share with you is Sky Vector, of course. Remember, they're all oriented true north. I already talked about it. Get away from that. Stop it. Okay, I already talked about bulletins. Now here I am. Whew. Okay. We know that there is about 1,300 miles between true north and magnetic north. I used to do a drill with my kids in the classroom. I would take their computers, they would all have them all sitting on their desks, and I would take a magnet, a compass, and I would stand in the middle of the classroom, and I'd look at the compass and go, yep, that's north right over there. And then I would take the compass and I'd walk over and I'd set it on their computer, and now north is over there. And I said, why'd that happen? I said, the magnetic field's in the computer. I said, exactly. That's the same thing about the way our globe is kind of same thing. I want you to be understand that. So with that said, we have a pretty neat phenomenon here in the good old US of A. We have what we call this agonic line, and it happens to run right through Florida, through Tennessee, and that's a 0 degree, and we call it the agonic line, because that's the line where true north and magnetic north are exactly the same. And then we can see we have these isogonic lines that are to the right and to the left of it. And that's how many degree variation from true north to magnetic north that I am. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. Now, here's the thing you really need to think about here. And why are we talking about this? What is the most basic navigational device a pilot has?
Compass.
Every aircraft has a compass, because you know what? I can be flying along and I lose all my electrical power, but yet my engines are still running. I mean, the lights are off, the instruments are gone. Oh my God. Oh my God. Now I go, hey, that's not a big deal because I got a map. Wait a minute. My map is oriented how?
True north.
True north. Oh, so now what I could do is I could take that compass, which is magnetic north, and then depending on how far I am from true north, I'll orient my map to magnetic north, because did you also know that all runways are oriented magnetically? Okay, so now do you see how this whole big system kind of aligns itself now? Okay, so let's take a look. Well, then how am I going to be able to see these lines of variance, or what we call magnetic lines of variance, on my map? These magnetic lines of variation, we see them with these dash magenta lines running through the map. Do you see that going kind of north and south right here? That's a 7 degrees west of the agonic line. So I would take my map and I would move it 7 degrees, and now I can fly and I'll get home eventually. So these dash lines that you see running north and south on your map, dash magenta lines, you'll normally see a degree attached to them, and that's showing you how far off from the agonic line, that is, and they're called magnetic lines of variation. Everybody comfortable with that one? Cool.
I never was. I don't know why. It's a
You
big
never was comfortable with it?
magnetic north, magnetic north and true north just puts me off. I don't know why.
Well, the magnetic north, of course, we have magnetic fields within the earth, as you understand, and they actually seasonally, yearly, they actually change. So that actually kind of moves.
Maybe that is the reason too. Too many
And
changes, too many variations.
that-
I'm a
and that-
co-pilot somehow, but
and that's why the true north,
that's the part which
that's
I
right.
no, don't give me those extras.
So the true north is why, let's just make a map and we'll set it to true north. That's standard. And you will see, I bet you, and I've done this, in fact, I pull a map from a year or two later, and that isogonic line is actually a different degree off, and it goes that way. Because why? Magnetic lines of variation. So that makes sense to me. But that's it. And hopefully that helps. Here's
Or
just
maybe you
another,
have to keep yourself too updated on that, and I have not been that regular on it. Maybe
well, now you can,
maybe it's too much. Yeah,
but you
I
see
am
right here.
understanding it at least now.
That's all I'm at. And then lastly here, you can see that here's just another example. I'm just showing you this dashed magenta line going north and south. This one happens to be 8 degrees west. And could show them, you'll see them all here on the maps here. All right, let's press on to something else. Let's quickly, I got about 8 minutes. Maybe I can wrap some of this stuff up. Some additional symbols on a sectional chart. Please go to your legend at the very beginning here. Let's try and wrap some of this stuff up for you guys. I'm going to focus down here at the very bottom. If everybody's there, the area where it says obstructions. I mentioned to you when we kind of give you the construct of this before, it kind of look like little teepees or little M&Ms set around there. And I said, if anybody's got one of those lightning bolts coming off them, it says it right there, high intensity lights. That's what it is. Okay, so you'd see them depicted on the map just like that. But the other thing I want to draw to your attention, do you see the numbers that are there? So outside of the parentheses, very bold numbers. For instance, that's 2049. That is in MSL, the height of that particular obstruction. It could be a tower, it could be a water tower, giant light pole, what have you. But that would be, in this example, 2,049 feet MSL. Inside the parentheses, it is the AGL, the actual height of the structure itself. And this one, it would be 1149, as you can see in your legend that was there. It's the example they provided you. You may also see a UC, and that either means under construction or unconfirmed. And then hopefully on the next printing of the map, that would be confirmed at that time frame. Just another thing, I know you guys are wizards at math, but you can see here MSL 2049 and AGL 1149. If I wanted to determine what is the elevation that tower was actually built on, or I should say obstruction, I just subtract the two, right? And that'd be
I
pretty
see.
simple, 900 feet in this example.
I see.
All right. So I just showed you, here's an example of the obstructions, right? 4,977 MSL, or the actual height of the structure was 1,432. AGL is what that is. And the other things, I showed you these before, they're actually on your legend. I think when we walked around, I made you put a little note next to them. These were, remember the flag that I told you? We called them VFR, right? VFR checkpoints. And those are things that I could see from the sky. It could be a big lake. It could be a water tower, just something that's going to stand out to me. And then a waypoint would be, I called it the triangle circle, was the best way I kind of depicted that for you. I think you guys recall that, right? All right, next. All right, let's wrap this up here. We've got elevations next. You guys probably remember in school those things called contour lines. Remember those things? When on the basic maps, they taught us about those. Okay, on those contour lines, what did we learn about it? The closer that they were, what did that mean?
Here.
Either the steeper or the drop off, right? One way or another, depends on which side you're on, right? Either the steeper that's going to be, or the bigger the drop off. The farther away they are, kind of rolling hills is what those would be. So that's one way for me to kind of look at topographical information. But if you'll notice on all of your little maps that are inside, so let's go to figure 21 for me, please. We were there before. And Dave, you're all excited. You got your book, man. I love it. All right, so if you're at figure 21, if you look down in the very lower right-hand corner of figure 21, you will see that it has, I don't know, I call it a little terrain thermometer, right? You got, it's a light green, you know, you're getting down close to water. And if you get up high there, dark brown, I'm getting way up there in the mountains, right? It's giving you at least a ballpark of what those heights could be in those respective areas. Everybody sees that, right? That's not that difficult to figure it out. But do you remember where we went to that very first M&M to find our Latin longs? And I said, hey, go to the 2.6 that was right there. Do you guys ever recall that? That blue 2.6? Those are what we call maximum elevation figures. Those big blue numbers that you see, 2.6, 2.8, 2.1. Okay. So there is nothing inside that 30 by 30 minute quadrant higher than 2,600 feet. So as I'm flying along, I go, oh, as long as I keep my butt above 2,600, I'm not going to slam into anything. Okay. Now you probably often wonder, hey, how'd they come up with that? Well, I'm going to show you with the one we looked at. So let's look straight above to that little M that we have there. And it says it's 2,481 feet MSL, right?
Mm-hmm.
So all we do is we round it up to 2,500 and we add a 100-foot safety buffer. Bam, I got 2,600 just like that. So it's already got in a built-in safety buffer for us. But most importantly, your takeaway is these are what we refer to as maximum elevation figures, the big blue numbers.
Can
Go
you
ahead.
can you repeat that one more time? How they got that number? Just-
Yeah. So within the 30 by 30 minute quadrant, you understand that, right?
Yes.
They looked all the way around, and whether it's man-made and or terrain, they looked and they found that obstruction there, and that was at 2,481 feet MSL. So we round that up to 2,500, and then we
Got it.
added a 100-foot
Got it.
safety barrier. Okay. All right, let's move on. And lastly here, let's measure some distance. So if you look, as we talked about previously, right, we said latitude is going to be pretty consistent all the way up to both poles, whether it's up to the north or south, right? 1 nautical mile is going to be that way. We said that's not necessarily true with longitude because we talked about the curvature of the earth, right? But for the most part in North America, we're pretty good with that. So what I need to draw your attention to, it's extremely important you don't mess this up if you're ever asked anything. Look down at the bottom of each one of your maps, and you will see, bottom or top, depending, you will see there's a little scale down there for you. It's broken into 3 kilometers, nautical miles, statute miles. It's there for you. So please, 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 if you're asked to find something, 4.7 nautical miles from this airport, then choose the right scale. Make sure you're choosing the nautical mile scale. And you know this, they built the first portion of the scale with how the intervals are of those particular items. So when they give you that blank piece of white paper, when you're testing, you could just lay it there, mark off 4 nautical miles, and now go to your point and move it forward. Oh, that's the tower they want me to find. That simple. Okay. Bam, bam. And lastly, airport data. I may go a little bit over time. I hope not. I'm on borrowed time right now. Please go to your legend quickly on your legend. And I may just kind of show it to you, talk you through it, and then bam, we'll pick it up again next time. So if you're on your legend, about in the center, do you see where it says airport data?
Mm-hmm.
And we kind of talked about this kind of in passing one of our first nights together here, that they give you an example up at the top, right up there. You see that just like on my slide here, right? They give you a little example of airport data. What is airport data? That's that writing next to the airport. Tells you its name, does it have a control tower, et cetera, et cetera. That's what all of that is termed as airport data. So they give you an example of airport data here in the legend, and then they break it down right underneath it. I like to go a little bit more in detail. It's 8 o'clock, and I'll see you guys at Wednesday at 6 o'clock. How's that?
Sounds good, Tony. Thank you so much.
All right, guys, I really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so
And we'll
much.
see you Wednesday, 6 o'clock, ready to rock and roll, my time.
Thank you.
All right, we'll see you
Raj,
guys.
Good night.
God
Good
bless.
night.
Good night.
Thanks, Tony.
Thank you, Jerry.